Give me a run for my money. There was nobody, no one that run me. So give me a run for my money. Sipping bubbly, feeling lovely, living lovely. Just love me.
Hey you guys, I am so excited today. It is December 15th, 2024 on this beautiful full moon. I'm not sure exactly where the full moon is right now, but I know I just walked out this door and saw it shining bright on us. So I feel very inspired today to introduce to you guys my friend who is a barber, an anger management facilitator, a poet, a motivational speaker, definitely a black man ascending on his highest timeline, okay? Only the best and the brightest. So here's my friend Carl. Tell us where you're from.
I'm from Chicago, South Side, and born and raised, grew up there. Made my way to Cali, SoCal. It's sunny, it's expensive, but I'm here. So my journey took me all the way from Chicago through my travels, all the way to California. So, I'm happy to be here. I got my own barbershop and started a men's group a couple of years ago, Higher Power Men's Motivation and Support Group, and worked with Volunteers of America out here, facilitating their anger management courses in San Diego.
Nice.
So that's what I've been doing. That's my part of my journey, starting from Chicago to here. So
Yes. Are you getting out doing any spoken words yet?
I did a couple times. It was kind of dope. It was a small crowd. I did it one time, actually a couple of months ago, at this little restaurant with soul food joint, Felix's Barbecue with Soul. So, and Wednesday nights he's having some things over there, live instrumentation and musicians and spoken word.
Dope.
Yeah, so I did that.
Dope.
It was cool.
That's awesome. Carl has agreed to do one of his poems tonight, so I am like super excited, you guys. My mind is blown every time I hear him in his gift and doing his art. So I'm really, really excited about this moment. This has definitely been a year or so in the making, right?
Yeah, it's been a long time coming.
Yeah. I'm like, where to start? So many good things. Tell us more and remind me about your upbringing, including the fact that you are like highly gifted, right?
Yeah. So I grew up in the projects of Chicago, Algier Gardens, and throughout my academic, in school, in elementary school, I was super bright, super gifted, academically gifted, and I was in all the gifted programs. When I got to high school, I was going to Chicago State University in the morning and back to high school in the afternoon, and learned how to play several instruments, mastered them all, and so that was, and it skipped a lot of grades too. So my dad put me in Catholic school when I was like in fourth grade, and I took an IQ test, and it was 149. And I was just a kid, and I loved to read, and so they had no work for me. They wanted to put me up 2 or 3 grades. My dad said, "No, nope, you can't do it." So after a while, I got bored with school because there was no work for me to do. So I got bored, and what we do when we get bored in the hood?
Smoke weed every day.
We smoke, we drink, we bang, we hang, and that's how that went after high school. Well, in high school. So yeah, humble beginnings in the projects in the South Side, and then from there on to incarceration. You know what I mean? Did some time there, and then on to California. So that's where I am today.
Nice, awesome. What was it like? I know even like in today, 2024, being a person that, really seeks to be high vibrational and conscious and, constantly feeding your mind and things like that. It's sometimes difficult to kind of find your tribe and find your place. What was that like as a kid growing up, obviously gifted? You had to think different from everyone else, or, tell me what that was like. Just let us be in your mind
Okay.
for a little bit and
I'll
tell
take
us.
you in there.
Yeah.
It was a lonely place because I was a bookworm. Like imagine growing up in the projects, being a hood kid but being smart and a bookworm. Being a bookworm, I read 5 books a month when I was like 7 years old. And so my mom used to order these books for me. They were called Me Books. And 5 books would come to our house every month. And the stories were about me and my brothers, and everybody was in those books. And so I read those books, then I started reading Homer and Odyssey, and I was reading all that kind of stuff, right? Just fantasy stuff. So my vocabulary became so vast and extensive that nobody knew what I was saying because I was using words that the ghetto kid don't use. And so I was ridiculed for that, you know. And being a teacher's pet, being the brightest in the class, I was pretty much ostracized. Nobody liked me because I was smart. And it didn't help that the teacher would be like, did everybody hear what Carl said, you know? And be like Carl, I was like, stop, I had to fight at school behind that, you know? And so the kids didn't like me, you know? So growing up in the hood and being academically gifted, it's like you're not supposed to use big words. You're supposed to be dumb. You're supposed to be, you know, not be academically astute or use your mind power. And so over time, I started to dumb down. And I started to be like everybody else. You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? This and that and the third, blah, blah, blah. And that wasn't my normal vocabulary. So it was a lonely place because I was on these journeys and these odysseys in my mind and in these books. And the world was very vast through reading, and it was very small in the projects, you know, one block, you know, then it's our block against that block, you know. Then as I got older, it became this set against that set, this gang against that gang, you know, we all grew up together. But, you know, I was in my own gang, in my own mind, you know, and I had to fight many battles just to be me. And sadly, eventually I stopped being me. I tried to be something other than me because I wasn't accepted, because I was a smart kid, you know. And so that was part of the, I won't say the breaking of my spirit because that happened later, but that was part of me learning to assimilate, learning how to be who I am not, you know, learning how to try to be like everybody else. And when I became like everybody else, I got what everybody else got, you know. And you know what that is. You know, a lot of funerals, a lot of time in, you know, upstate, you know what I mean? So yeah, so growing up as a kid, it was fun. You know, I did all the things the kids did. I boxed for Chicago Youth Center, I played ball, I did all of that. But I had to suppress my nature, my true intelligence, because it wasn't accepted, you know what I mean? And that was a hard thing to deal with because it took me a long time to learn not only who I am, but to have the courage to be that, to be who I am. It took me years to have the courage to be who I am in spite of what everybody else thought I should be or what society says I should be. So that was a long journey.
Yeah, naturally, if you cage a lion or, you know, you have these beautiful pit bulls, right? We put them in the backyard, they never walk, they're never stimulated, and they're so aggressive. And people are like, those are bad dogs. It's just, they have all of this in them to do something. And it's never, they don't get to live out their full life and be champions like they were born to do, right?
Right.
And in the same way, it just reminded me of that a little bit. You know what I mean? I know that you're an anger managed facilitator, and I know how it feels when you're being pressed down, when you're being put into that sunken place. What did you do with that energy that's bubbling up inside that wants to be realized? Did it come out in rage when you were kind of being mischievous and things like that? Do you feel like some of it was anger because you weren't really able to express like you wanted to, like you
I
said?
tell you what it was. It wasn't anger. It presented itself as anger as years went on. Later on, when I got harder, got tougher, you know, through being a product of my environment, then it became anger. It became rage. But first it was shame. You know. Yeah. It was shame. So when the world is telling you that you can't exist in your natural beauty, and you can't exist in nature's creation or the higher power's creation in the way that you were born to be, then you become ashamed of being who you are. You know, how your grandmama say, "Boy, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. Or, girl, you ought to be ashamed of yourself," right? That's something you've done. You ought to be ashamed because you knew not to throw that rock and bust that window. But shame is deeper because now it's you're ashamed to even be. Not just be who you are, just to even exist. You're ashamed of that. Because the world tells you you shouldn't exist in the way that you are, in the state that you're naturally born to be. And everybody around you says, you're an anomaly. Something's wrong with you. You're not supposed to be smart. You're not supposed to have a vast vocabulary or be academically gifted. You're supposed to be like us. And then at some point, I'm ashamed of who I am, so I try to be who I'm not. And success in that, trying to be who I'm not, is disloyalty to who I am. It's betrayal. So my first sense of betrayal, I learned from betraying myself. You see, and when you do that, when your loyalties are divided, you have no true position. To be loyal to one is to betray the other. And so if I'm loyal to me, then I betray my friends. If I'm loyal to them, then I betray me. Now, which one did I choose? I chose the easiest one. I chose to betray me because nobody saw that. And I didn't feel the effects of that till years later. When I looked in the mirror and I was ashamed of me because I was disloyal and I dishonored myself in a way that took me years to recover from. And that was part of the breaking, of a beautiful spirit. Of course, along with other traumatic experiences and incidents that became defining moments in my life, And I can pinpoint those moments after years of reflection and introspection. I can see just exactly where it all happened, where I started to spiral. And that was just a part of it. Just, peer pressure and all that, that was just a part of it. That was I can't say it was a minor part. I can say it was an integral part of who I was going to become, who I was becoming. My outside influences, becoming like the dudes on the block, the pimps, the players, the hustlers, the gangsters, the dope dealers, that's what was in my hood. And so I looked up to them because I was afraid to be me. I was ashamed to be me. So I wanted to be what everybody could accept. And of course, there was the first betrayal, in my life. You know what I mean? And so years later, many, many, many years later, through, counseling myself, I had to dig down and find the courage and strength to be who I am, despite what everybody else says I should be, or the world, in spite of and because of. And so I made the decision to become the man that I am today.
That is so moving to me because is the shame something that you were conscious of back then, that feeling of shame, or is that something you came to realize as an adult, looking retrospectively at yourself, like, okay, what I was kind of going through when you started to become your own counselor, you started doing your inner child work?
No, I felt it then. A child knows shame. If they don't know nothing else, they know pain and they know shame. And of course, they know happiness. But everything else is a mystery. We don't understand different emotions. We don't understand mentalities because we're just pure as children. And so, but every child, well, speaking for me, my child, I knew what shame was because it felt bad. It was not even sadness. It was despair. Because what I was doing in shame, you work against the nature of your spirit. in the direction of your spirit. You work against that, you know what I mean? And then there's an internal struggle that causes confusion and turbulence emotionally, and a child has no idea what those things are and why it's happening. But I knew that, I felt shame to be who I am, you know. So I had to ignore it, you know. And that was, once you start ignoring yourself, then you start losing yourself. So I was lost a long time ago. And I was on a journey to be lost, you know, to end up in the lost and found section, you know. But I'll give you an example of how that felt, how shame felt. There was a cartoon I used to watch when I was a kid, you know, Christmas cartoons and all that. And you had this cartoon, it was Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, and it was a Baby New Year. You know, the New Year's was coming. And he had this little baby, had this big T-Pain hat on, and he'd take off his hat, he had these big, big funny ears, and everybody would laugh. And so it would make him sad when people laughed at him. He was ashamed of his ears. And so when they laughed at him, he crawled away and nobody saw him leave. He crawled away, got on a boat, went out to sea. And he went to a place, it was called the Isle of the Misfits, Land of the Broken Toys.
What?
Yeah. And that's where I lived for years. In here, inside, you know. But he felt more comfortable on the Isle of the Misfits, in the Land of the Broken Toys. And I'll just call it the Land of the Broken Boys. So I felt more comfortable there than I did anywhere else, because everybody there is broken. And you accept it in your brokenness. And matter of fact, it's encouraged. You know what I mean? So it's a very lonely place. It's just like isolation or exile. Internally, nobody sees this happening, especially in the projects. There's no counseling. Nobody looks and says, hey, what's wrong with that kid? This kid was on this path, this trajectory, and now all of a sudden, what happened to this kid? Nobody sees it. You know what I mean? And that's how we fall through the cracks. That's how we become statistics. You know, now you got programs, you got counselors, you got people that's paying attention. They'll say, why is this kid got straight A's and now he's failing? Something's going on in his personal life. Let's see what's on his mind. Let's see what's happening in his life. Let's talk to his parents. Let's investigate this, because we don't want to throw this child away. And we don't want to lose this child. It's a bright child. In the projects, in the inner city, where you got very little funding, you're socially and economically deprived. And we don't have those resources, and never did. And so there was no counseling. There was nobody that said, what's happening with him, with little Carl? Nobody. And so in that way, I started to, and this was probably teenage years at this point, I started to drift, into that Isle of the Misfits. I was already there as a kid, but and I stayed there on through adulthood. So.
You talked about different times in your life where you felt this sense of, I don't want to put words in your mouth or anything, but times in your life where things happen where just you felt like, okay, those were milestones, things that happen. I don't know if milestones is right, but
Defining moments.
Right. Can we talk a little bit more about some of those defining moments? And because it was a trajectory, right? That or going downward, not trajectory, but of going to prison.
Right.
And what do you feel led you there?
I had an incident with my father. I was living in this house, and and I used to get my butt whooped, and it was different when an old country boy whooped your butt, you know what I mean? It wasn't extension cords, it was butane tank hoses. And so one fateful day, I didn't do something I was supposed to do. And, he beat the crap out of me, right? And needless to say, I respect the man to this day, and it's one of my best friends. We talk 2-3 times a week. And, but what happened that day was I won't say exactly what he did, but I begged for my life that day on my hands and knees, looking in the eyes of the man that gave me life, and I begged for mine. And that was the day my spirit broke, you know. And I took off running. I hit the door, broke to my friend's house, bloody, you know, gashed up, messed up. They called the police. They took me to the hospital. You know, then I went back to the projects with my mother. So, you know, the police said it was a fight. You know, it was nothing, you know. He just got his butt whipped, but nobody knew that I begged for my life that day. And I vowed then I'd never do that again. So I've been in situations with shotguns in my face and was like, do it. Because I wasn't gonna beg no more. And, but that's the day that my spirit broke. That's the day that I gave up on everything. I gave up on all academics. I gave up on everything I ever loved. All of my dreams to be a teacher, I gave up on everything. Started gang banging, smoking weed, drinking 40s, cutting class, not going to class, went from straight A's to straight F's. Kicked out the gifted program, no longer going to college in the morning, cutting class, getting high. I gave up. I didn't care about nothing, you know, not even myself. And so it was that mentality right there that led me down that path to doing what I did, you know, in the commission of a crime. You know, it was assault with intent to kill, maim, or harm, and cause serious physical injury or bodily injury. You know, and so 3 counts of that, the 3 counts of armed criminal action carry 6 life sentences. You know, so it was that mentality, that broken mentality, that not caring, that becoming hard, you know, and not caring about human life no more, you know, popping pistols in the street, this and that, playing with guns, and gangbanging, that led me to the mentality that I had when I caught that case. Because I didn't care about the victims. I was trying to kill them, you know, because I wasn't gonna let nobody ever, you know, make me beg for my life again. You're gonna beg for yours before I beg for mine, and that's what happened. And so eventually I got caught. You know, my rap partner told on me. Nobody knew my name. He did. He told and testified, you know, in trial. I lost out in trial and got 74 years. 2 20s, 2 10s, 2 7s. The 20s and 10s, the 60 years ran concurrently. So they started on one day. The 7s ran consecutively, running wild from each other. So, you know, so I went down, you know what I mean? And I stayed down 14 years.
It's easy for people to think that just be who you are, but it takes a lot of work, and it takes a village. And I think people also water down or minimize the importance of belonging. And when you're looking at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, belonging is like right there. It is so important. Like just people in general were just made to be together. So when you talk about the island of misfits, that's like deep. Is that more so a mental state place in your mind? Is that something that you felt in your soul? Is it the neighborhood you grew up in? Is it prison? What are you referring to exactly?
We look at black men, and we look at how the world views us and views our men, and we look at our fathers who weren't there, you know, and we look at, you know, just what of our role models have been in the neighborhood, and we say, that's my star, that's my shiner, that's my example, you know. And based on us not having guidance and those kinds of things, we band together, you know. So that, you know, that aisle of the misfits, it starts very early. It starts with those who have been ostracized, those who can't see what they can really be. You know, those who's been those kids whose spirits have already been diminished, and they're already becoming products of their environment because the environment says that you can only be this. You can't aspire to be anything more than what your circumstance or situation is. So I think that, I didn't have an understanding of it at that time because I had a young mind. And throughout the travels, just growing up with my friends that mothers were crack addicts, and spending all the food stamps on drugs. And he's got to fend for himself. And he's got nobody but me. He don't have nobody but his friends. That's the bond, that, and then we all out there on that island because we would rather sacrifice our homes and be with him than to have him out there by himself.
You know what that feels like to be out there by yourself.
Yeah, because even if you grew up in a home and you've been ostracized by your friends and your peers, then you're still out there by yourself. So it's either join them, beat them or join them. Your perception of your reality becomes your physical reality. That's what happens. So you recreate everything that you are internally. Whatever you are in here, you recreate outside of you. So if I'm hanging with a bunch of little boys and we're all broken, well, we're going to grow up to be broken men. Where we end up incarcerated where everybody's broken. Another island of misfits. So we recreate the reality, when we put ourselves in position to be a part of that reality, We're part of the manifestation of that reality. We manifest our destiny, so we end up where we know where we think we should be. Nobody says, hey, I'm gonna grow up and go to jail.
Self-fulfilling prophecy.
Self-fulfilling prophecy. Mm-hmm. Exactly. So then we end up where we think we should be. We do all the things that lead us there, and we don't even know we're doing it. It's going to lead us there. And so I've been locked up with dudes who go home and recreate a prison cell in their house. And at 6 o'clock in the morning, they're standing up in the bedroom door waiting to be counted by a guard, and they're free. They had to recreate that reality because they don't know how to exist in any other reality. So, it's an experience all the way through. So, but I mean, I'll let us get there, whenever we get to that point, we discuss that. But so I don't think I could articulate it at a young age, but I do think that, and I didn't understand my trajectory or my path, but I don't think I cared, wherever it took me, whether it was to the graveyard or not, where my friends were, I didn't care, so.
How does a 14-year-old process that type of betrayal?
I think it's just about impossible to process that. I mean, that was something that I didn't even understand until years later. It took me 20 years to get over that, 25 years. I mean, I didn't even understand what happened. Nobody saw what happened. Nobody understood it. Nobody could say, why does this kid now have straight Fs? Why is he dropping out of high school when he was on a trajectory to go to college, with scholarships? And so I couldn't pinpoint it then. I couldn't tell you. All I could do was keep moving. So I smoked and drank like everybody else. We got buying the dollar joints. Back then it wasn't no blunts. It was a dollar joint, a $5 bag, nickel bag, whatever. So I was just doing, I was just medicating. I didn't become a dope fiend. I didn't become an addict, but I was doing what everybody else do. Get a bag of weed, get a drink, go to the hood party, kick it, turn up, And so at that time, I didn't realize that I was broken. It wasn't until years later, sitting in the 5x7, up all night thinking, what happened? Why are you the way you are? You got to pinpoint this. You got to go back through every thought, every experience and figure out where this happened. And that's where I figured it out. That's where I figured that out. So I'll give you an analogy. You can take a chandelier, it's big as this entire room. And take it to the top of the Sears Tower in Chicago and drop it off the roof. And have it as a crystal chandelier and have it shatter into 1,000,000 pieces on the ground. And now you have to go down there and figure out which shard fits into another shard that makes a piece of glass. How you gonna put that together? And so that was me in the middle of that, in 1,000,000 pieces, and don't know where to begin of putting this back together. It took me 25 years almost, over 20 years to put those pieces back together. And I had to figure out which ones were so damaged and so broken that you can't even use them no more. Just throw that away, and put the other pieces back together. Hopefully they'll fit. And I had to rebuild. I had to I kind of like listening to Nipsey Hussle when he was like, I designed myself. I understood that. I designed myself. I had to know what to throw away and what to keep. And there was no instruction manual and there was no counselor to help me sort through that mess of all those broken pieces on the ground around me. That was me. So I had to piece by piece put that back together. And I did it. I did it. And I wasn't perfect when I came out. It's like balling up a piece of paper. It's nice and clean when you take it out the pack. That's a child. You ball it up, throw it in the corner. That's life. You pick it back up and straighten it out, it's still gonna have wrinkles. It's never gonna be 100% clean again, And so that's how I had to understand it to be. I'm gonna strive to be, but I may not ever get back to where I was as a child, in that pureness, But I have an adult understanding of pureness, which translates to righteousness, and that's how I live.
I like that. I think it talks a lot about acceptance.
Yeah.
From the time that you got inside, and how long did it take you to really sit in and get to the point where you're like, all right, I gotta map this out. I gotta reverse engineer this thing and figure out how I got here. What was that process like acclimating to your new situation? What did it take you to really sit in that acceptance?
It took solitude. I mean, sitting in that cell at night, just up thinking all night. It took that kind of solitude and for me to become in tune with a vision that I could have, that I could believe in for myself. And so with that, I had to rebuild and I had to make a decision of what kind of person I wanted to be. What kind of man that I want to be. And I had to make that decision, and I made that decision. But I was in about 4 years. This is about the 4th year, and I didn't have my first parole hearing until after 7, but it was 4 years later. It was like 1997, and I was sitting there, and I was like, I can't do this. I can't keep living like this because I'm wandering aimlessly, And I made a decision in that year to be who I am today. And I wrote a poem about it too. It's a cold-blooded little piece. And so in that poem, I envisioned what I could be. I said, you know what? I had to rebuild this internal structure, my moral infrastructure, which is my house. I got to rebuild this thing. Whatever's there, I need to tear it down because the foundation is cracked anyway. It's flawed. It's a total tear down and a total rebuild. That's why I be talking about Nipsey. I designed myself. I had to do that. And so the man I wanted to be, I wrote a poem about.
You know about her?
I do. And in that poem, everybody that played a significant role in my life is in it.
Mm-hmm.
Is in that. It's dope. So I'll tell it to you right now. It's called My Crystal Palace. Because right now today, I say I'm a glass house built on a diamond foundation. because I'm transparent. You can see right in there. I ain't got nothing to hide. That stems from this poem, My Crystal Palace. And it goes like this. The wind is an ice castle waiting to be entered. And my life is a straw house that falls when the castle blows. I found a perfect friend to help rebuild my palace, but there are some tasks in life that one must face alone. First, I'll design my house with love and construct it with trust. I'll paint all the rooms with kindness and furnish them immaculately in gray. I shall add an elevator of emotion and ride it with melancholy joy, and build a spiral stairwell of self-esteem and put morality on the top floor. The basement of my humble abode shall be dedicated to the struggle to ensure secrecy of the movement, an underground world of black guerrillas trained to defend at all costs. The kitchen will be done with my mother's touch, a delicate touch of quiet perfection, a touch that exemplifies respect for humanity and the dignity one feels to do what is right. There will be no living room because all of my rooms are living, standing erect with the strength of my brothers. The fireplace breathes with the flame that could not be doused, a pyromaniac's dream, the dream of life, an inferno of will, the will to live. It is the fathomless flame that hides behind my eyes. The bathroom will be done with my sister's compassion to reflect the clean spirit of a mistreated child. It will shine brightly like the pain she carried so well, and scented with forgiveness as she washed our sins away. And then comes the attic, cold, cruel, and heartless, filled with blind rage and hatred, the fury of my father. This room should be sealed to all but one, for he holds the key to his own destruction. My patio will be built in a congenial sense to entice my social being and to welcome those who really are not worthy, for to have a friend must one be. My life is a welcome mat for joy and pain, happiness and sorrow, yet there is no line between love and hate. All is one, from dusk till dawn, for everything are we. Now my house is an ice castle, waiting to be entered, and I am the wind.
Oh,
You know? Wrote that in 96 or 97.
Oh man, I felt that. I could see that too in
Yeah.
every room. And I love that your rooms are living.
Mm-hmm.
And that being a written, is this a mantra for you at this point?
Oh, yeah.
A manifestation or
Yeah.
a spell you're casting over your life, right?
I did it. I cast a spell back then. I'm living it now because everything I described in there is the truth except the attic. I mean, it's a reality at this point except the attic because me and that guy are best friends. You know, there was reconciliation and forgiveness there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
what was it like to shift from that lower vibration of thinking to finally coming out of the loop of the land of the misfits?
Okay, it was an epiphany. It was a revelation. You know, because just like you mentioned Khalil Gibran, I read a lot of him. The first thing I read was by him was called Spirits Rebellious. You know, dope book, right?
Yes.
And then, of course, the way that happened, that shift, what I felt was empowered because I felt a renewed or a new sense of self-respect. And I garnered the respect of my peers because I had the courage to be who I am or who I wanted to be, what I envisioned myself to be. So when that shift started to happen, I started to believe in myself again. I was learning from my poetry. Things I used to write, I used to learn from. Like I was accessing depths within me, accessing a deep knowledge and writing it, and I didn't even understand it until I wrote it. And I studied my own writings and learned from them and learned about myself. And so when I started to believe in myself, when I started to learn who I was and what I could be, and that I needed to have a vision for myself, like in my Crystal Palace, then I started to have a higher esteem, more confidence, more courage, overcoming fears. You know what I mean? And on the other side of fear is freedom. See, at one point I was bound by my fear. And at that point, I was no longer afraid to be who I was. And so I was freed from the fear of, and so I was free from fear of failure. Because the fear of failure is afraid, you're afraid to succeed, if you're afraid to fail, And so I knew that I had to succeed in that way of becoming a man. No other way. There was no professions in there. We worked in factories for 15 cents an hour, So I worked in a barbershop for $20 a month, So it wasn't no success. And then the only success was personal gains. Taking programs, succeeding in programs, becoming a facilitator of programs. Now you've got Stone Killers looking up to me for advice, And I spoke to a part of them that that I knew personally. Even though I didn't know the man, I knew the spirit of the man. I knew the island he lived on. I knew the solitude that he was in. And so I had a gift to see inside of people and speak to the heart of people. And I found that gift in there, going through a class, anger management. And then the faculty member that ran the class asked the entire class after the class was over, who should be my co-facilitator? And they all said me, because I was just thriving and I was excelling and I was gifted in that. In teaching, I always wanted to be a teacher. So I started running those programs. I started co-facilitating, and then I started doing all the classes. And then I started to facilitate all the classes because I was in my element as a teacher. And I was a tutor in the school, helping guys learn how to read and write and get their GEDs, guys who were functional illiterates. And so that was my forte, because I found that in there. And I excelled, So when I made that transition from the man I was or the broken man I was into the whole man I was becoming, I understood what was happening there because I asked for it. I told myself this is what I needed. This is all the writing, the whole process was for this moment, or for that moment. So, and in that moment, even in that dark place, I seized the moment, and I knew that I would never be what I was because I'm too far into who I am. So that was that transition, and I saw that happening. I was excited about it. I got up every day looking forward to it. I listened to music at night, writing, looking forward to this what I would discover in those writings and the knowledge that was in there. So, and I never read the Bible and the Quran.
Wow.
So a lot of stuff I say in my writings, people will tell me, well, that's in the Bible. That's this chapter, that chapter. That's this book or that book in the Quran. But I know it's all in my DNA. It's all there. You know what I'm saying? You just got to access it.
That's dope.
Yeah.
That's dope. You know what? I've talked a lot about mirrors, but I've heard you say it in a different way when you're talking about reflections, right?
Right.
When you got in there, what was the reflections like? And as you started to evolve, how did those reflections change?
That's a good question. Because at that time, I was dealing with reflections from the standpoint of a neophyte, from the standpoint of somebody who's unlearned and is learning. And so I knew the only reflection I understood at that point was when I look in the metaphysical mirror, I need to like what I see, And if I don't like what I see, because there's nothing in there, there's no Lambos, there's no Louis, there's no Gucci, there's no Jordans, there's none of that. It's just you and yourself, and you got to look in that mirror and say, what do I see? And so that was my first understanding of reflection because I couldn't see nothing but what my mind's eye told me, inspired me to look at. But now, so because I didn't have an understanding of reflections at that point, I just knew that when I did look in the mirror, in the mind's eye, in my mental mirror, I just wanted to see something other than what I was looking at. I was looking at dead eyes, And and I didn't see no life, you know, because there was a broken spirit behind those eyes, you know. And in that poem, that fireplace, an inferno of will, the will to live, is the fathomless flame that hides behind my eyes, because I had to rebuild that fire. I had to stoke that fire, you know, and I didn't understand the reflection of it all. Until now, until like 2020, I started working with reflections, and I use that in just about every poem now, because I said, when I look out in the universe, I want to see my reflection therein, and that reflection is the truth of who I am, because mirrors don't lie, you know. And so now I understand what reflections are, but as I reflect back to the past, I didn't have a deep understanding. I just knew I couldn't be what I saw. You know, I had to be something else. And I didn't know what that was until I wrote it.
When you're in your artistic mode and this stuff is just flowing through you, because obviously like a part of you is vacant because you don't even know what you're saying until you actually read it back to yourself. Right.
Right.
What do you think that is channeling through you? And for us who are trying to be more in our artistic flow, where does this conscious part go? Where this unconscious or whatever you believe that it is? I'm really curious to see what your perspective is on it. Because
it's deep. It's deep. It's real deep. It's like I was on the phone this morning, half sleep, and said something so dope. It's just automatic. You know what I mean? But I think that we all, and studies have shown, even right now, I forgot the brother's name, Billy Carson. Studies have shown that all the knowledge is still in your DNA from eons ago, from generations past, from ancestors, you know, passed down. And it's up to us to access that. You know, you have to be in tune. You have to be finely tuned and in tune, you know, with your spiritual being. And that means you got to deny a lot of the physical world, you know. You have to have self-discipline and control to pay attention to your spirit, you know. So, you know, in that sense, when I'm in that zone, nothing exists. Time is a continuum that has no real structure, you know. And I'm just in that zone, and I'm writing, and I'm flowing. I'm just going with a thought, and I'm letting that thought take me into another thought, and it's got tendrils, and it's like a labyrinth of thought, and it's endless tunnels, it's endless channels, you know. And so when I'm in that zone, I don't think of anything but what I'm thinking about, and sometimes I don't know what that is until I start writing. I have no idea. I'll write a line, and it takes me into another line. It takes me into another thought. It takes me into another thought. And then when I look at it and it's finished, and I'm like, wow, where does this come? It reads like an ancient African, you know, ancient scroll. I don't know where it comes from, but I know it comes from within. That's where all knowledge comes from. You know, even some of the religious texts say, study thyself, know thyself, because it's all here. You know, and the more I speak, sometimes I don't even know something until I say it. It's that dope. Like, I can say something, and everybody around me would say, "What you say?" And I'll repeat it, and then it hit me like a ton of bricks. I'm like, wow, I had no idea what that was until I just said it. Now I write it down. I got a book full of them, and I have to write, you know, because it's like I'm teaching myself whenever I speak or whenever I think, you know. And so I don't have a process or a workflow. It's without rhyme or reason. It's a season. It's like when I need something, I know how to go in there and get it. I know how to block out everything out here, and not even think about what I need, because I might not know what that is, but I know that there's turbulence, and I know that there's something I don't understand, and I'll just start to write. And I write and I write and I write.
okay, I feel we can go so many different places with this, right? I mean, I hear a lot of reoccurring themes. Shame, betrayal. You know, shame is a huge thing. Like there's a lady, Brene Brown, doctor Brene Brown, and most of her studies are like about shame and how it stagnates people. You know, um, when you're talking about, in my eyes, a sort of a death. You know what I mean? That
Yeah.
later on became a rebirth. And that boy that is there, they're losing themselves, they're feeling alone, you know. What would you say to that boy? Like, what did you need to hear?
I needed to hear, and what I would say, it's okay to be yourself. You know, I would instill courage in him. I would say it's okay to be yourself. You don't have to change who you are to be accepted. You know, be be strong enough to be who you are. Be yourself, despite what anybody says to you about what they want you to be or how you should be. You know how your kids are. Kids will tease you. You know, they'll try to bully you. It's just peer pressure. And so I would tell that little boy, be who you are and don't be afraid, because one day you'll be a king. One day, because you are who you are, you'll be a strong black man, you know, and I'll be proud of you. And I'm proud of you right now. Don't listen to everybody else. If they don't like you, that's okay, because I like you and I'm proud of you. That's what I would tell him. And some boys have never heard that. I was reading a book by Juwanji Kunjufu, Developing Positive Images and Self-Discipline in Black Boys. That was the name of the book. And he said that. And he quoted W.E.B. Du Bois. You know, because by the time we're 13, we don't understand why we hate so hard, why we're so mad. It's like a switch, and we don't know why. And our parents don't know why, our mothers don't, especially single mothers, they have no idea what's happening with this boy. And it's because of that. He's ashamed to even exist because the world tells him that he is nothing. In everything, in every institution, in every commercial, in every TV show, every depiction of black life tells him that he's nothing. And his nature tells him that he's everything, that he's great. So what we have to do is reinforce that. We have to tell him, I would tell that boy, you're great. It's not that you'll be great one day, you're great today. You know, studies show that a negative word is 16 times more powerful than a positive one. If you say I hate you once, you gotta say I love you 16 times to combat that one statement of hate or negativity. So we gotta constantly reassure our boys and our girls, but specifically I deal with boys, that it's okay, that they're okay, and positive reinforcement, affirmations, and reassurance and acknowledgement, for the person that they are at that point, not what we would like them to be, acknowledge who he is. And that builds his character, that builds his strength. It bolsters his self-esteem, and now you change the trajectory of his mindset. He starts to develop a mindset based on that positive reinforcement instead of the negative one, or negative images about himself, a stereotype. So that's what I would say to him.
What are some tips that you can give boys to accessing their inner physician, their inner hero, that they can do right now, that they can really just dig deep within themselves? I don't know how.
Well, that's a more difficult one, because usually boys don't access the inner heroes. What they do is they pick one outside of themselves to pattern themselves out there.
Okay.
Superman, Batman,
Okay.
Michael Jordan, LeBron James,
Yeah. Yeah.
and mentors, neighborhood coaches from
Yeah.
football teams, from basketball. These are their heroes, especially the ones that don't have fathers. They don't have a model. And so they pick somebody that they identify with. They identify with that particular strength, that person's power. And they say, I want to be like that. So boys boys don't have a model within themselves of what a hero is. They have a model outside of themselves. And that's why we need more fathers in the home. We need mentors. We need coaches. So some boys, their coaches has been their only father. That's why they play sports, because they learn about themselves. It's not just about football or basketball. The coach teaches them how to win, how to lose, how to handle your emotions when you lose, how to be humble in your victories, and how to navigate the unstable world of testosterone and aggression. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So that's a mentor. So that's what boys look at. We all are here, can be heroes, but until we know what a hero looks like, then we don't know what we look like. Mm-hmm. So it's our reflections. Mm-hmm. It's what that man in our life reflects to us that we see ourselves in, that we can aspire to be. That's why it's so important for men to be in the neighborhood, in the communities, in the homes, and because we always say it takes a village to raise a child. And it takes a village of men, not just one. And if he doesn't have a father, he should have 10. Uncle, coach, teacher, barber. I mentor a lot of boys in my barbershop, a lot of young men, 18, 19, coming from Chicago, from Memphis, Detroit, from right out of the hood to the military, trying to make a better life for themselves. And they pass by 25 shops to get to mine because of what I tell them, because of what they get from me. Am I the best barber in the world? There's no best. It's the most consistent. But what I give them, they pass by all the shops along the way to get to me to hear that. So it's about what we're pouring into boys and young men. And it's about giving them an idea of what a hero looks like. He may not have a cape, he may not have $1 million in a Lambo, but he got character, he got love, he's got compassion, he's got understanding. He knows how to bring the best out of a young man and give him something that he can grow in, And just like we said earlier, a lot of young men don't even know that they need work. They don't know that they've grown up in a dysfunctional household. They've grown up in a toxic environment. Mm-hmm. They don't see where they need rehabilitation because they have never been habilitated to begin with. Mm-hmm. And they don't even know where to begin, So it starts there, to building, and then there's another level. Those who are already broken, and trying to mentor them and teach them where to begin to start the healing, what to look for, what to acknowledge, what to recognize. It's mm-hmm. an arduous process. Because I always say this, I say, the boy in me must be healed so the man in me can be whole. Mm-hmm. And we can substitute boy for girl, same thing. Mm-hmm. The girl in you must be healed so the woman in you can be whole. Because sometimes we run around here and we're broken boys in men's body and we're acting like children. Immature, non-committal, babies mm-hmm. all over the place. Mm-hmm. Because we're not healed. And we think, that pleasurable experiences, it heals the pain for a second. But the real issue is still there. The underlying issue of the brokenness and the shame is still there.
The situation that happened with your dad to me was really pivotal. I don't know, in my mind it took me back to the Willie Lynch letter, the old versus the young, and mm-hmm. some of these concepts that I feel happen a lot in the Black community, whether it's mother-daughter relationships and how these generational cycles of abuse, in a sense, mm-hmm. To a dad that may have parented their son in the wrong way or have a distance, from the son's perspective, what advice could you give a dad to come and mend with his son?
The first thing I would say to him is never too late. Because I was 40 years old when my father and I made amends. And there's a book called Making Peace with Your Father that I read. It's an actual book. And so I would say to men, where there's a disconnect with their boys and their sons, it's never too late to reconnect because that boy has been waiting on that. He may be a 30-year-old man, but the boy in him is not healed until the father acknowledges. And he's waiting on that. You know what I mean? And he's angry. And the father may have to go through a lot of turmoil, a lot of, rejection, but he can't become discouraged because that's that boy protecting himself. He's already hurt. So for what I would say to a father is, it's never too late to reconnect with your son. It's never too late to parent him. You parent adult children too. And it's never too late to seek forgiveness. To say, son, forgive me because I wasn't there. I'm asking for your forgiveness. I'm ready and willing to be a part of your life now and teach you and learn from you. Because the man you are is the man I was afraid of being. And you taught me how to be a man because you became a man without me. Those are bridges to reconciliation. To put your pride aside, and look your son in the eye and say, I love you, son. I dropped the ball. I messed up. Admit your wrongs. Take accountability. Man, I wasn't thinking straight, and I love you, but I didn't show you. But you got to be mature, and you can't be angry. You can't switch the blame, and you can't make excuses. You just got to be real and raw with that conversation, and there can be reconciliation. And redemption. And I think that's what we need in our communities. We really need that. You'd be amazed how many 40-year-old men have a conversation with this 65-year-old father, and some things come out that the boy never understood, never knew. And had he known that, he wouldn't have hated his father the way he does. Mm-hmm. So it takes a conversation, a real one. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And to push past these generational cycles, to really get out of this loop that I feel like the Black community has been in for a long time. It takes the work of having enough humility to look at your reflection. And just that much humility, it seemed like, can set a whole generation free just with a sincere apology.
Oh yeah, that's right. You're correct about that. Yeah, that's a good assertion. So I've had to forgive myself. That was the first person I forgave. Then I set about the business of repairing relationships and asking for forgiveness in the relationships that were important to me. And then I had to stop blaming everybody else for my situation. I had to stop saying, you're not doing this for me and you're not doing that and you didn't send no money to my books. They didn't put me there. As a matter of fact, they hurt as much as I do because they don't have me. They're victims now. I victimized them. And that's a lot of time we don't realize that. We not only have victims on our case, that we locked up for or incarcerated for, our families become victims. They're suffering without us, And so when I realized that, I had to ask for forgiveness for putting other people in a position where they've taken a loss on account of me.
I really love that. And that really hits home for me because to understand that your family took a loss without you means that you really understand the value that you bring.
Absolutely.
I don't think Black men understand the value that they bring when they are in themselves, when they haven't lost who they are,
Right.
The gifts, the balance that a man brings to everything.
Yeah.
And how much households are truly lacking because of the lack of. And I just want to encourage people because it's like,
no matter, like Carl said, no matter what you've done in the past, just you can still put good energy into just mending it. Just the intention is gonna do great things, you know. A couple of things that I also wanted to bring to light. The power in writing, journaling. Boys, journal, babies. Get you guys some journals. Journal your thoughts and your feelings. What you're actually talking about, I don't know what it's called, but it's a therapeutic technique where you just write kind of what comes to your mind. So I don't know if you knew that was a therapeutic technique that you were doing.
I didn't.
But it actually is. You just kind of free write, and the subconscious tends to start dumping out, so then you can kind of figure yourself out. So the fact that you were kind of doing this for yourself naturally was amazing. And I want to encourage boys at home, men, your inner child, all of that stuff. Put that pen to paper and write. And that is one of the quickest ways to access the subconscious mind. I'm a hypnotherapist. This is what we recommend a lot. Also, another thing, reading. Reading was very influential for you, right? I'm just, what this makes me think of is for boys who are mothers who might be listening to this, okay? Because we trying to get these boys right. We trying to pour into them. We trying to love on them. We need them. We need you boys. We need you black boys in our communities to rise, to remember who you are, you know. You are so valuable to us. You're our leaders. We are in need of you guys. You guys bring such a balance to our communities.
Right.
You guys have such value. They've done studies when it comes to just having men, period. Of course, we know the statistics for single mothers, unfortunately, are very high when it comes to incarceration, when it comes to people dropping out of school, and a whole laundry list of things that these kids are 100 times more likely to do if they have a single mother.
Right.
And we know when it comes to having a two-parent household, all of those risks kind of just come down to almost nothing.
Right.
Well, what they learned is that in households that were raised by single fathers, a lot of the statistics equaled what it was to have a two-parent household.
Yeah, I've seen that. I've seen those stats, yeah.
This really brings to light to me the value of a dad, a coach, a leader,
A man.
a guide,
Yeah.
a man, a protector, a covering.
Right.
And what I come to feel in my heart is that what you're saying, a lot of black boys do not feel covered. They do not feel protected. They huddle in together for warmth.
Right, because they're not protected, you know. And we have a misconception of protection. We think protection means from physical harm. We're not talking about physical protection. We're talking about protecting his mind from the things that are going to try to take it, to try to steal his innocence. You know, we got to protect his heart, so to speak, so that he learns how to nurture the things in his life and his environment, learns how to take care of things and be responsible for himself and teach him and help build character. We got to protect him from the things that take away from his character. That's why you got to hover. That's why you have to be present, because there's so many things that kids are exposed to that threaten to take away the sanctity of their innocence and taint them and make them become toxic. So we have to protect them from those outliers, from those things outside of them, and that opens their eyes and makes them attracted to those things. It's the pull of the streets, you know. So we need to protect them from those things, and then and keep that shield over them, and raise them in stages and degrees to where when it's age appropriate, they're venturing into more responsibility and more independence. And then as they go on, we continue to teach them, and then they're more independent and they're more responsible. They're stronger. You know, we don't need our kids to be exposed to certain things that 13 that they shouldn't be exposed to until they're 25. Everybody loves their child.
Yeah.
You know, a woman carried a child before he was born, had a connection with him before anybody else.
Yeah.
You know, and there are ways that she can ruin a child. You know, I've seen children have an after school job at 16 years old, and he's complaining about the manager, the supervisor don't like him, and he's on the fries, he's got to mop the floor, and mama says, well, baby, they shouldn't treat you like that. You don't have to go back to work. Daddy's going to say, no, you're going to take your ass back to work. You made a commitment, and you're going to follow through. Just because it's uncomfortable, that don't mean you're going to quit. You know, but some mamas want their boys comfortable, and now he's in your house till he's 30. Dad, we make them boys uncomfortable. We're gonna teach you how to thrive in discomfort. So then you can make it comfortable for yourself.
For a single mother who inside, we're talking about the Black woman.
Right.
So she's an intuitive woman, right? And inside, she knows that her boy is out there huddling together with the misfits so that he can feel warm. She does not have a sense of identity to give him. So she's over nurturing him and trying to protect him because maybe deep down she knows that he feels lost, right?
She's trying to protect him because she's afraid, but go ahead.
And maybe that too. Okay. What do we say to that mother who carried him for 9 months, whose instincts is to nurture and hover? Because I've been in chats and stuff where this kind of comes up, and the mothers are like, I don't know how to be a man. I don't know how to teach him these things. What do y'all want us to do? All we know how to do is nurture. How can a woman get out of a young boy's way if they are in lack of a male figure in the household? Because
Good
some
question.
households don't have any.
Right, I know.
It's
I've
unfortunate.
been a part of that where it's been all women, it's been all aunties and sisters and girl cousins.
Yes.
So you know how we say it takes a village to raise a child?
Yes.
It does. So what a single mother has to do is create a village of men for him. You can't take him to any barber. You got to talk to barbers, see what his mindset is. And then you set your son in his chair because he's going to feed him something. I've got so many mothers that come to me from other cities and other states. Their sons in the military. They say, I've been waiting on to meet you, Mr. Carl, because I've been wanting to know who take care of my son. He talked to me about you. You know, and they thank me, said, you know, and then some of these young men say, hey man, I never had a father. You're the only father I know. So create a village for your son. His barber, his coach. You got to get a coach that's just not about winning and got big dreams of being an NFL coach, and he's driving these kids and he don't care. No, we need a coach that cares. You know, programs like Big Brother programs. There are programs out here, few and far between, but they exist. You know, and then there are mentorship programs with strong Black men who are college professors who are very educated, well-rounded, come from the block, come from the hood, got an education. You got to set them up on the perimeter of his life. That entire village. Go ahead.
Really quick, you guys, he's throwing the jewels out there. If you're looking to start a nonprofit, you see what our needs are. We need mentorship. Let's make it happen, people. Let's push each other along the way. We got to push ourselves to be better because this is uncomfortable for us, but we got to work through this as a people.
Right.
So these programs, we need these programs. I really do appreciate that.
You know, with that entire network, you know, that's what's going to take him into the next level if he don't have a father. Because of, like some of the mothers are saying, hey, I don't know what to do with him. I don't understand what his testosterone level is. I don't understand his aggression. That's because you don't know what's in his father. That's why we had extended family in the household back in the day and right around the same neighborhood, because we knew his father used to do the same thing. His grandfather did the same thing. His uncle had a propensity to do this. We knew what was in that boy.
Come on now.
Who made him.
Yeah.
So now we don't know nothing because we got fathers all over the place.
Yeah.
And now we don't know what's in him, especially the mother. We don't know why he's doing what he's doing.
Yeah.
But if he had his father and his family, well, his granddaddy did the same thing.
Yeah.
You know, his uncle had a propensity to live like this. He was attracted to that.
Yeah.
And we know he was aggressive like this. He was born with it. So now we know how to harness it.
Oh, wow.
We know what we're looking at.
Yeah.
But now we don't even understand what's in his DNA, what's in his bloodline. So when things show up, we don't know what they are
Yeah.
because we don't know what they were in his daddy.
Yeah.
He's in the grave, he's in jail, wherever he is.
Yeah.
Got another family, who knows?
Yeah.
So it's important to build a village
Yeah.
of black men around a black book like that.
It's intentionality.
It's
It's
intentionality,
like-
yeah. You gotta be intentional about it.
And mothers, to be intentional, you have to elevate the way you see the black man. I had to really work on this, y'all. I realized when Barack Obama was president and my attitude was, this nigga, I was like, okay, you are unhealed. You
Right.
look at your black men in a negative light. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. We all are programmed to see, the world is programmed to see black men in a certain way.
That's
you know,
right.
how the movies, et cetera,
By
et cetera.
design.
We know, by design, right? Black women, I feel like, have taken the bait way more than we want to be conscious of. And even me, who's a pretty conscious woman who love my people, I fell into that too. And what I had to do is I had to start studying black men. I started studying Malcolm X, Muhammad Ali. I started studying just men. You know, Napoleon Hill. I don't know who has been like your influences, but I had to elevate how I saw black men, and I Malcolm X is a big one for me because he's so well spoken. He's disciplined.
Powerful dude.
And I'm like, man, men like this exist. And now I'm expanding the way I see black men. I see them as dynamic, as inventors, as all of these things. We could definitely go all kind of places with this, right? But I cannot, I would literally squeeze him to death because it's just a lot of juice in this fruit, right?
Right. That's good.
But if we can do another part, so I don't feel like I have to squeeze it all out of you. I know I don't want to take too long, but I don't want the people to miss out on
Right.
a lot of good things. I have just a few more questions, so
Okay, we
I think
good.
we can do
Yeah.
another part,
Yeah, absolutely.
so we can wrap it up
Yeah.
and you can eat.
I ain't hungry. I ain't
Yeah.
hungry at all. I'm good. So
Okay.
I'm good.
Okay.